education market and changing classrooms and learning for students.
How many of you had a career day in your classroom so far? It used to be common. It used to be, and then that's the thing is, when everyone's losing their jobs, how do you have a career day? So it's like, and also when, how do you have a career day about, I teach a typewriting class. It's like the jobs of today are becoming the jobs of yesterday. And so how do you bring forth renewable energy? To be a scientist of renewable energy. The kid on the farm outside Topeka, he's like, hey, have you heard about ethanol? Have you heard about, getting involved in that? Like, how do you, the kid who's the kid who's in our Harlem and he loves fish. He always wants his mom to take him to the New York Aquarium, and but they don't know what a marine biologist is. And so kids, they respond to what they're exposed to. And so concrete examples are much stronger than lesson plans. And so you can drill success all you want into them, but they see Jay-Z. And so they see Lil Wayne. And our pop culture just pushes that on them. And so they see the rewards. And so that's what I do is to just show them the rewards of doing something that would really excite you. And so that's what I do with Careersters. And I think that one of the biggest I think movements in technology is this concept of the cloud, and that is that their work, that the things that they care about can exist. And that they can share with their networks and the greater world, and necessarily doesn't have to be something that is that tangible. And so you can create and you can produce something, and that kind of excites kids, because when they see Justin Bieber get discovered on YouTube, and his life is transformed. And the kids are watching and they say, "Wow, how does my life get?" When he did that, there were tens of thousands of videos of young people. It's like, okay, I'm doing the talent show, make sure you record me. And why is that? It's because they want to be discovered. They want to be discovered in Topeka and Harlem, in Oakland. And so that's what I do, is I help them get discovered. By build their career profiles and what they want to be and put it out there. And so that's how I do that. It's by recreating, digitally recreating career.
So I think with the Google Apps is sort of three things. The first is, I already mentioned, but cost savings. Schools spend a ton of money on email, just a ton of money, and it does, that's not something that's really going to impact student achievement. So if they spend less money on teachers' email and more money on other things, that's good. So that's number one. The second is collaboration. Like, you guys know how important collaboration is among teachers, and then among students, and among parents, and that's really the core of what teachers do, and yet it's really hard given the confines of a school day and the structures of schools with individual classrooms. And so if you have tools that can bridge those classrooms and bridge the geographical distance that might be between students or between parents or between teachers, like Google Docs or the rest of the suite, that's helpful. So we're seeing teachers use it for collaborative lesson planning, and we're seeing teachers use it with their students for collaborative writing. And then the third is, I kind of view it as like a gateway drug for technology. Like, teachers are, some teachers are a little bit apprehensive about bringing technology into their classroom, and they're not sure exactly how to use the tools. And so if you give them really, really easy-to-use tools that they're probably already using in their outside of school lives, then it opens that door a little bit and allows them to start thinking creatively about how they might be able to integrate technology in meaningful ways.
I sort of have a follow-up question to that. When I think about technology in the classroom, I think of it as a powerful lever, but I have questions around the actual leverage. And to me, some of the potential challenges fall into two buckets, the first being access, and the second being the technological literacy of teachers and of students and adult influencers. And what I've seen in my 4 years in the classroom is often really patchy access. So doing grants that put 3 computers in a classroom, then they're out of date within 3 years. Doing grants that have a smart board in 1 classroom. And then in terms of the access, most of my kids actually do have access in some form to a computer, but what they're able to do with that ranges wildly. So I'm just curious on your thoughts on either of those sort of buckets and how to leverage technology for our kids in a more effective way.
I think one thing in terms of device access that's going to start to change. I don't know what different systems in the Bay Area use, but in New York we've made a massive investment in classroom libraries, just in making sure there's a couple hundred books basically in every single classroom, because the only way kids can make reading improvement was to match them with books at their appropriate level, which was great. I mean, it was really expensive, but it was the right thing to do. But it's not. It's really expensive, and e-readers are going to become really, really cheap. I mean, over the next 10 years, next couple of years, sort of in the consumer area, the next 10 years, sort of in education, extraordinarily cheap. And the idea that
yesterday about like kids getting e-readers and all of a sudden like turning off televisions and just like it totally meets them on their plane.
Certainly, I mean the idea that from a simple cost standpoint that buying a classroom library is actually more expensive than just buying a sort of a simple kind of e-reader tool for all your kids. And then what happens once that doesn't completely answer your question of what do we do today.
Yeah.
But as that starts to happen and the prices are just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, you begin to be able to passively track what kids are learning, which basically changes everything. What I mean by passively track is today, if you want a record of what a kid learned, generally the kid has to write something down on a piece of paper. You need to grade it. You need to enter it into some kind of grade reporting system, and then you need to report it back to students and parents. That's insane. Obviously that's always going to exist to some degree in various applications, but that's not an efficient way to collect information. Imagine if that's the way that Netflix worked, where it's like you had to call someone, tell them what videos you might be interested. They would call you back and say like what you might want to, it wouldn't work. The idea that kids could all be on e-readers, that they're just reading, the computer's passively tracking how quickly they're reading, what books they're interested in, which ones they like, which things they star, what stuff they underline, all that stuff that already exists in the consumer space. If you're using a Kindle, it already does that. For adults, it already does that. That begins to transform education. Because now I'm a first-year teacher in the classroom. I don't know any good middle school English literature. It doesn't matter. It's like a lot of the stuff is known, sort of passive recommendation systems that say, hey, you finished that book, why don't you try this book? Why don't you try this book? Why don't you try this book? And so there are 100 things that you need to do expertly as a teacher. Recommending books doesn't have to be one of them. That's something that technology could actually start to change. And the big transformation point is having devices in every kid's hands, and it's going to be much cheaper than anything else, than textbooks, than paperback books. It's going to be much cheaper. So.
Yeah, and just the effort it takes to track all of that. Like you were saying, your kids did so much better when they saw all the progress and saw the tracking.
Absolutely.
But the effort it takes to do that could just be spent so much better.
Certainly. I mean, there are a million things.
I think ubiquitous learning, this school of thought around how important the cloud is, and how kids need to, especially kids who are in unstable situations. When a kid is given a gun and say, okay, you are part of my clan now, and if you don't, then I will kill you. And here it is. And that kid may not know how long that lasts. That kid may not know how long they'll be in foster care. But if a teacher can say, well, your homework is still up there, so it's still waiting for you, and knowing that, knowing that the work that they do counts, no matter how unstable their situation is, I think is so important. So, storage, like Google Apps, not having to depend on emails being, to go through the school network. The school goes down. It's like, okay, what's going on with my emails or whatever. Now your email's hosted, and some servers up there. And I think that kids should be able to have that kind of access. And I think that's important because as Matt was saying, Netflix is now on your game console. Well, why can't homework be on your gaming console? Why can't it just pop up like, ooh, homework? So it's like, yeah, and I got to do it then. So can you do your homework, with your controller? And so I think that's, I think that as long as we're pushing that as long as we're collapsing the walls of what we think the classroom is, I think then the technology can then be shaped around it. So it starts with the thinking, it starts with mindset.